Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of Wednesday night webinars here from Life as an NQT. We are live now on YouTube, which is good. I want to start off by saying big apologies for last week's webinar. It didn't quite work in terms of technology, so we will try our best with the tech tonight. Fingers crossed it won't be too bad. If my internet does dip a little bit, then that's when we tend to lose the quality, but fingers crossed. It will all go quite well. We are going to jump into the webinar in just a few minutes' time. So if you are here this evening, thank you very much for joining us early. A couple of things I will go through, as I always do, the welcome to the webinar and explain a little bit more about me. More than anything, that gives you some time to prepare. And this evening, there is actually a handout to go alongside the webinar. So if you are watching this live on YouTube, down in the comment box or the information box below, there is a link to my blog, Life of an NQT and Beyond.wordpress.com. On the post about today's episode, there is some information in there which will help you, and it will show you the PDF, which is the handout which goes alongside with the webinar today. It's not compulsory; you don't need to have it, but it could be quite useful as well if you want to go and grab that one. Hopefully, you'll be able to do that without any sort of conflict with the screen and what's going on. As always, I've got Twitter open as well, so if you do want to make any comments, then Twitter is there on my screen and the live chat. So if you want to get fully interactive with the webinar today, those are the ways to get involved. Now, tonight's webinar is all about finding your teacher identity. So that is the main aim of what we're doing here. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. Just a reminder, if you haven't been before, my name's James. I am the person behind Life of an NQT, the Twitter feed and the blog and the webinars. This is my 7th year in teaching. I've been a trainee teacher mentor, worked with plenty of NQTs, obviously been an NQT myself, and now I'm a member of the SLT, a head of year for 4 years, a staff governor, a subject leader, and many different things. And the reason that I do this is because, as I say every single week, 7 years ago, I turned around to my university that I was at the time and that I did my BA in education, and I said that they needed to get more NQTs and more people that were fresh into teaching and new into teaching to deliver some content. So I started doing an annual talk at Kingston University, and the rest, as they say, literally is history. I'm now doing this. This is the 3rd episode that we've done of the webinar series, and it's the 3rd of 6. We've decided the first series is just going to be 6 episodes. So after today, we are halfway through, but I'll give you some more information later on the webinar about what's coming up over the next 2 weeks. And well, a new idea that I've had for the 6th one, which can be exciting. So you can find out some more about that one at the end. Obviously, as we go through, you can get involved and interactive. So please do that. You can find us on Twitter at Life of an NQT. And if you use the hashtag Wednesday night webinar, that will help just pop that up on my screen in front of me here. So today's webinar is all about finding your teacher identity, because when I became a teacher back in 2013, it's a little bit like learning to drive. I remember having my driving lessons, and you get taught all these skills, but you don't really know how to use it. And it's not until you get into the classroom and you are working with other teachers, you're working with people, and I suppose as a trainee, observing other teachers and thinking about their practice, that you think about what you are as a teacher and who you are as a teacher. And that, for me, has very much stayed to my core as I've gone through my teaching career. I hold on to those morals and those mottos for what I got into the job for and what I want to achieve. And so tonight's webinar is very much thinking about those different elements and hopefully doing some activities using that handout. If you found it on WordPress, again, the link is down in the comments and info box below, to sort of draw you in and to hone your idea on where your identity is. The identity that we have is fed by the reasons that we want to teach or why we want to teach, and it influences how we will teach. And it could have an impact on the rest of our career as well. So it's very important to do that. And I wanted to share with you from this book, which I showed last week. This is the Trainee Teacher's Handbook from Carol Thompson and Peter Wollstonecraft. And it was interesting to think about this because they put a chapter basically called "Why Do We Want to Teach?" or "Why Do You Want to Teach?" And I thought it was interesting to think about this one. And I was thinking about myself and why I wanted to teach. And it says here there was some research done back in 2013 exploring the main things that drew people to the teaching world and the profession that we do. It's not the money, as we always joke, and it's not the holidays, because we usually work during them. But what was interesting were the top 5 reasons that people said choosing teaching as a career. Now, obviously, sometimes people say things that they want, or they think that a survey will want to find. But 93% of the people who were spoken to in that survey said that they wanted to make a difference to other people's lives. 93% of people said that they thought they would be good at teaching, which is why they wanted to join. 91% of the people said that they were interested in teaching their subject, mainly, I suppose, secondary. An opportunity to make a difference to society, 87%, and a desire to work with children or young people, 86%. Those are the top 5 reasons, according to the research, which is cited in here. It wasn't done by these two. But those are the 5 main reasons why people back in 2017 wanted to teach. And I think most of us fall into one or more of those categories. I know for me, I wanted to make a difference to people's lives. My motto for a long time, about 3 or 4 years, probably longer than that actually, but my motto has been sort of pinched, magpied as we call it in teaching, by an American news presenter and TV presenter, Meredith Vieira, who says that she wants to make a little bit of an impact in everybody's life, a little bit of difference in everybody's life, and to have fun doing so. And that's very much my motto and my mantra now. It's why I do the webinars, it's why I teach, why I work in radio, and why I do the things that I do. And I think when you're finding your identity, part of what we're going to do tonight is to really think about what drives you and what motivates you, because not only is that going to help you in your career to think about where you're going to go and what you're going to do, but also that's going to have an impact on your children too, because as we know, we need to be role models for our classes. And so if you can have that high level of motivation and you can think about what drives you, you can encourage the children to do the same. The important thing to know though about tonight is that it's not as easy as being a type or a label. And I have to mention UniCheck, who I saw a thing from them on Twitter earlier on this week, which really, really cracked me up. And it was the labels and types of teachers that you might have experienced. Now, this is for secondary school. And of course, secondary school is very much welcome here, same as EYFS and primary and all the way through. But it was quite funny reading through some of those teacher types and thinking what types of teachers I had at primary and secondary. So some of the types that they had on there were 17 on their list. There was the type of teacher, which is my view, which is the only view, it's my way or the highway. I definitely had a couple of those. The cool ones, the sort of mentors, helpers, and friends, although sometimes they weren't the best. The apathetic ones, the sick and tired and annoying to pupils. The activist ones who pushed a proactive approach, encourage people to join every club and take every opportunity, which I admit there was a little bit of me in that one. The buddy teacher, the ones that are too chummy, a bit of a dude, but aren't really good as teachers. They're not really effective in terms of behaviour. The drill sergeant, who makes you follow orders and work too hard, usually too much yelling with them. The super coach, which works as hard as the drill sergeant, but coaches you on how to do it and gives you the motivation. I quite like that type, actually. I think it's quite a good one. The shy teachers, the control freaks, the highly concerned. There are many different labels you might get of teachers, and it may be that you fall into one of those categories. And I think every single one of those has got a positive. They've all got a negative as well. They've got a constructive, as I said last week. We don't work in negatives, we work in constructives. They are all positive in some ways, and it's thinking about which type of teacher you are. So if you have got the handout with you, brilliant. If you haven't, don't worry. Unfortunately, my internet and my computer at the moment doesn't give me the opportunity to do fancy graphics on the screen when I'm doing YouTube Live, which is a bit of a shame. But I will talk you through them if you haven't got them. The first thing, though, is activity 1, which is prioritizing your priorities. There are 3 main things that you need to do in order to find your teacher identity. So the first thing, as I say, is to identify your priorities. This is key because it's what drives you to come to work, and it influences your decisions and your approaches. Now, I didn't think of this when I first became a teacher, and there wasn't a time in my teaching and my training where I was sat down and I was told, actually, what is it that makes you do what you want to do? Using the examples that you would see in the everyday classroom. Now, there's no right answer to this. So if you are looking at that sheet in front of you, then you will see at the bottom there I've put 9 different priorities. These may not be the priorities that you would have. They may not be your top 9, but I've given you 9 as an example. And we're going to prioritize those in a moment using the Diamond 9 technique. Now, if you've not seen this before, this is a great thing to use in schools as well. I've done a couple of things that are hopefully are good for schools. This is where you prioritize your priorities using a form where you've got your top priority at the top, then a level of 2, a level of 3, a level of 2, and a level of 1. So the most important at the top and the least important at the bottom. And I'm going to read out for you in just a second what those 9 priorities are that I've given you. Now, if you are using the, I would say playing along, like it's some sort of quiz, if you're playing along at home, you can change the 9 priorities, of course. But I've put on here 9 things which link to the teaching standards, link to reasons why I think we teach, and are ones that you would experience in your everyday part of being a teacher. So I've put here the 9 priorities going across a range would be being liked by the pupils, to have excellent pupil data, to be respected by your colleagues, to develop your own knowledge, to be successful in your teaching and to be a successful teacher, to have great behaviour management, to have the ability to keep on top, to pass your NQT year, and to be valuable to the school. Now, I've put those as 9 priorities, and while I keep talking, for those of you who haven't got the handout, have a little think about what might be your top priority there. As I said, there's no right answer. And that's really important. And if I was to put these 9 things into the diamond now, 7 years on, it would probably be very different to how I would put them into the diamond when I was a trainee or when I was an NQT. These things change over time because different elements happen to our career. We take on new roles, we meet new people, we move to other schools, although I haven't in my case. So your priorities will change as you go over time. And the reason that I've given you the chance to do this activity and to think about this is because these are the things that drive us. And it's important to know, I think, as a teacher, what is your top priority. You know, if you want to be liked by the pupils, then that's something that is going to be very important to you, and it is going to have an effect on your teaching style. You're going to be a lot more respectful of your children. You might be worried about behaviour management and the fact that might destroy some of your trust. You might be prepared to go above and beyond with your pupils in a pastoral way, but the educational side, the academic side, might struggle slightly because your priority is getting the children to like you. And again, that's not a bad thing. The positive of that is you're a class of children who want to come to school, they trust you, they respect you, they want to be in your class, you've got a good reputation, and that's half the battle. If the children like you, they're going to want to come into school, they're going to want to learn. But of course, there's always a constructive with that one, because if you're spending all your time getting the pupils to like you, other areas might be falling by the wayside. And that's why there's no right answer. For all of these 9 things, there is a positive and there's a constructive. And that's really, really key. So have a look at your diamond 9 if you've been putting them in there. If you haven't had the time, just think about what might be your top priority. So is it being liked by the pupils? Is it that pupil data? Is it being respected by your colleagues? Is it developing your own knowledge, successful teaching, great behaviour management, the ability to keep on top, to pass the NQT year, or to be valuable to your school? Think about what is most important to you. And once you've done that and you've thought about what's at the top, again, if you haven't got the handout in front of you, it's going to be tricky. You can find it on the website, as I said, linked down in the info box. But have a think about what's going to be at the bottom as well. Because although this is the least important thing to you, it's not going to be the least important thing of your career. Okay, I've chosen 9 things here. You might have changed one of them. You might have put, passing the NQT year. If you're an NQT +1, that one might have gone, and you might have put something else in there. It might be, working on the extracurricular side of the teaching and to be pushing the children to take on clubs, to go on residentials, and to make the most of those other opportunities that education takes on. But just have to think about what is the least important to you, because again, that could for you be an area where you need to develop. And I think naturally as people, and we do this as teachers, we're very, very hard on ourselves, but you might want to think about the fact why that is your bottom priority. Is it because it is an area that you struggle with? Is it an area that you've achieved and you think, you know what, I've done that, I'm going to move on? Just think about what that might be, because that's equally important. It's equally as insightful. Christine's saying they're successful teaching. Now, I'm not sure, Christine, if that's your top priority, if it's your bottom one. Again, there's no right or wrong answer. For successful teaching, if that's your top priority, obviously, teaching is a very key part of what it is we do. It's where the name of our job comes from. You need to be a successful teacher because you need to impart that knowledge into your children. You need to make sure that they're leaving with that extra bit of knowledge at the end of the day. You need to make sure that they are getting the good assessment. Christine's saying there it's the top thing for her. That one links into others. Actually, if you are a successful teacher, then it's going to lead to excellent pupil data. If you're having lessons that are successful, if they are hitting the learning objective, the pace is good, that might be the priority for you. And for Christine, it might be the priority right now. It might change in time. You know, you never know. That's a really good top one. All 9 of them are. You know, if Christine had successful teaching at the bottom of her Diamond 9, that wouldn't be a problem. It might be for her, the pastoral side is important because she knows she's a successful teacher. And, you know, she's seen that through her observations and her feedback. So for her at the moment, that's not as much of a priority. It may be that it's her strongest area, so she wants to put it at the top because she's motivating herself to be the best that she can be. It's up to us where we put these things, where we put them. But it's nice to have our priorities. And it's important, as I say, because our priorities drive us to be the teacher we want to be. And that's what identity is all about. When we have our identity as a teacher, it helps us to focus on what it is we want to achieve in our job, the type of teacher that we want to be. And we all have those. You know, if you think about the teachers that you had at school, I still have teachers that I remember now from primary school who I loved being in their classes. I really enjoyed being in their class. They were great teachers, and I want to be a teacher like them. I want to be motivated and to remember my teachers, or for my children to remember me 20 years on from when I was in their class. You know, that for me would be fantastic. That would be an element of success. That would be a success criteria in my mind. But I need to think about what my priorities are, because actually it's by getting those in line that are going to help me to do those. So that's the first activity on the worksheet, and the first piece of advice I would give to you for finding your teacher identity. And for those of you that are joining us, if you're not quite sure where we are with this one, we're looking at teacher identity because it's important. It's really important that we think about what it is that motivates us to teach in the way that we teach, to think about why we are doing what we do, how we do what we do, and how those two link together. And that's what I want you to think about. Your teacher identity, it's thinking about who you are, how you are in front of others, and how that drives you. Cool, right. Activity 2 then. Activity 2 is a nice one. I've got to give credit to somebody for this one. I've got to give credit to Judy Clegg. Now, I will give you a quick story on this one. This is the book that this came from. I don't know if it came from her directly. I can't remember if it came from her or if it was something she used. We're going to be plotting your purpose point next. And the story behind this is written by Judy Clegg. She is a Canadian investigator. Her book is called How to Become a World-Class Investigator, an insider's guide to a secretive industry. And you're probably thinking, well, secretive industry and investigation is nothing to do with teaching, unless something has appeared in your classroom, you're trying to work out which child has done it or where someone's homework has got to. Julie is one of the hunters from Channel 4's Hunted. She's one of the people who works in HQ. And in my other role as a radio presenter, I have interviewed her a couple of times. Now, she is a brilliant person, a fantastic backstory, and she brought out this book what must have been 2 years ago now, 2018. It is a great read. Now, I'm not telling you so. She hasn't paid me this. I bought this myself off Amazon. But part of the book here is about finding a mentor in terms of an investigative mentor, establishing yourself as an expert. But when I was reading this one at 3 o'clock in the morning, sat in A&E about 18 months ago, there was something I saw in here which really motivated me and really helped to think about this next point. So thank you very much to Julie. I asked her about this in the week, and she said I had my permission. I had her permission to share that with you. Lynn also saying she put successful teaching at the top with a note of what successful is. So maybe impactful teaching instead. Nice. Yeah, successful is one of those willy words that we can use in teaching. What actually is success? Is it the fact that your lessons are timing well, they're sticking with pace? Is it that all the children have met the LO? Is it that they can walk away with something and they're keeping it, you know, a week later? Because I know that in my class a couple of years back, retention was a really big thing. A successful lesson could go really well, but if they weren't retaining it a week later, you know, how successful is that teacher? Really good point. Thank you very much, Lynn. So so we're going to be looking at finding your purpose point. So activity 2 is to help you find purpose. Now, when you go into a school, either as an NQT or as a trainee, it can be quite difficult. And I remember this well because you don't necessarily have a role. If you're in a big school like I work in, a junior school, Key Stage 2, and we have got 3 form or 4 form in some year groups. We've had a bulge class every single year that I've been there. You've got lots of members of staff. We've got 22 teachers in my school. And therefore, as an NQT, I didn't have to have a subject. I didn't need to lead an area of our curriculum or our school life. And therefore, going into school, my focus should have been on passing my NQT year, of course, but I didn't really feel I had much of a role outside of being a class teacher. And that was fine for me to begin with. But I also thought, actually, I need to think forward about this one. I had a temporary contract when I started, so I didn't know if I was going to be at the school for more than 12 months. But I really wanted to think about what I wanted from the school and what I was going to give the school, which is a piece of advice I always give to people who are having interviews, because I think it's important to get that in your head when you look at a new school and think about that prospective partnership that you will have. So having a purpose and considering your purpose is a good way to find your feet in a new school. It can be very daunting, can be a brand new environment, new people, can be tricky. It's good to consider your purpose. It helps you to find your way, steers you towards what you might like to lead and to get involved with. So even if you are new to this, you could be thinking ahead. And this is also quite a nice thing for TS8. And if you're watching last week's webinar, episode 2, then you'll know we were looking at evidencing the teaching standards. This is a good one to think about how you're going to evidence TS8, because it's that wider professional responsibility. It's that including into your school ethos. So if you have a look at the diagram, and again, if you haven't got it in front of you, don't worry, I will describe it to you and you can think about it at a later date. It's basically a big Venn diagram with 3 circles in. Now, in the top circle for you, I want you to think about what your career-related passions are. Now, they don't necessarily need to be things at work, okay? So for me, my career-related passions, on top of teaching and interacting with other people, communicating with other people, imparting knowledge, might be, for me, it's to work in media. So I work in radio and I do video things like this. So that's one of my passions, to work in that industry. I quite enjoy the fast-paced element of it, and I enjoy the communication side of things. So in that first bubble, it doesn't have to be the school passions, but it could be those passions that relate to your career. So they've got to be interesting there. I mean, you could put baking on there at the moment. In lockdown, we're doing a lot of baking. A lot of people are trying the hairdressing, which I still haven't done. The lockdown hairdo isn't getting any better. But you've got passions. So think about what your career-related passions are. Because that's the first point, and actually your passions are going to help your purpose big time. The second thing then is your skills. The skills are the things that you are good at, the things that you can bring to the table. As a younger member of staff, very cliche, but in my school, I've always been one of the ones known for the IT skills. So if something breaks, if the speakers in the hall aren't working, computer stops connecting, nothing's printing, the server's gone down, I'm usually one of the first 2 people, and most of the time the first person who people will come to. Now, that is a skill that I've got, and it's something that is useful for me. And it would be quite easy to say that my purpose in our school environment and school community is to work on the IT. It's not, it's a label I was given, but it's a skill that I've got. So that could work in terms of my purpose. But think about those skills. Is it the subject knowledge side of things? Are you particularly good at teaching in GPS? Are you good at mental calculations? Are you good at supporting a child one-to-one? Are you good at working pastorally? Are you good at storytelling? It's a key skill. Are you good at thinking on your feet about lessons? Are you good at improvisation? Are you good at being at the front of the class and communicating? Are you good at working with a group? Are you good at working one-to-one? Think about those different skills. That goes in your second circle. Then the third one is your moral and ethical points. And I think this links to your priorities. We as teachers have very strong morals and ethics, and it's quite funny because we keep them into ourselves until somebody questions them. And there's been a lot of that on Twitter at the moment, because obviously we're talking about all things coronavirus and COVID-19. We're thinking very much about schools returning, and we're expecting to have that announcement on Sunday on what is going to be happening in the next stage of schools and the lockdown plan. But it's when people question and discuss those morals that we can get very fired up as teachers. So for me, part of my morals that I think that the children do come first. They are the most important part of the job. I also, however, think that the well-being of teachers is important. And as I've become a senior leader in school, I've had to think about that a lot more. And actually, it's a very big balance between the two. Maybe part of your moral and ethical points is that you feel very strongly that the fundamental British values that you've got in part 2, that they are instilled. Maybe you think part of your moral and ethical points is that respect is a key thing that you want to be showing in your classroom. And if you're teaching things like RE and PSHE, you are instilling that respect into your children. Think about those moral and ethical points. In the book of investigation, it's thinking about the areas that you should investigate. So the things that possibly would be a conflict of interest. But I think for teaching, because we don't really have conflicts of interest with teaching, we all learn maths, we need to teach maths. It's around what you want to get from the children and what you want to get from yourself. And then with any Venn diagram, finding that purpose point is that middle spot. So seeing where those three things come together. So for me, one of the big things that I feel is a purpose in my school is to put in the elements of responsibility for children. I find I do have a passion about children gaining their own responsibility, being empowered for their learning. Responsibility is one of our school values, the school that I work at. For my skills, I would say it's a bit of a tenuous skill, but it works in this situation. I'm quite good at creating opportunities for the children to work independently. To empower them to feel that they can do that. I like the growth mindset element, and I think that's quite important. And the moral and ethical points with that one, for me, independence is a key value. It's something that it took me quite a long time to develop when I was a child myself, and I can see why it's very important for children nowadays to have that, particularly in the world where we've got the internet world and e-safety being such a big thing. They need to be independent and they need to be responsible. So for me, one of those purposes might be to really instill a sense of responsibility into the children. Now, that's nothing to do with teaching and everything to do with teaching, because it may not be a piece of knowledge, but it is a learning style. It is an attitude, I should say, that the children have. It's something that's going to help them. It's a tool in their toolbox of education. So that might be a purpose for you. It might be that your purpose is to instill new ideas. Maybe you are an ideals person. Maybe you're one of those people, of course, you brilliant people are coming from NQT training and teacher training, and you're coming with all that fresh knowledge, the new guidance that's coming from the government and all of those things. You could be, as your purpose, a new person. You are an influencer, so to speak. You are creating those new ideas. So think about that and find your purpose point. That is the second thing to finding your identity as a teacher, finding your purpose. You've got your priorities, those are intrinsic to you. You can share those with others, they could be private, but then it's finding your purpose. Now, I don't think that people would have found theirs just by doing that activity, because that's one of those that takes a little bit of time. If you have, brilliant. If you want to share it, please do put it on the live chat as always, or tag me on Twitter at @LifeOfAnNQT. But that's not one that you need to share. That's, again, something that could be private for you and something for you to work on. But think about what your purpose is in terms of your school community. Think about your purpose in terms of your class community. What is it that you want to do? What is it that is there for you? Because actually, again, as part of your teacher identity, that's going to drive you. That's going to influence how you deliver your lessons. It's going to influence how you, walk around the school, how you get involved in those extracurricular activities, how you might, behave and act in assemblies. I know that for me, I really try and instill the behaviour of my children in assemblies, because again, they need to have that responsibility and ownership for their own behaviour and their self-control. So that might link to my purpose point. But that is the second part of that teacher identity, your priorities and your purpose. Those two are very key. The third part then, and again, if you've got the handout, that is brilliant. It is on the link, so if you go down to the information box below the video, it is for you. The third and final one is planning your progression. Now, this is also key. Obviously, you don't walk in the door of a school and think about a 5-year plan when you're an NQT. And it may be that you are a trainee teacher. About it. You may also be an NQT to be, and you haven't got a job yet. Okay, if that is the case, don't worrying about that. Don't worry, I didn't get my job until late June. But at this point, it's unlikely that you will have a 5-year plan. It's good to think about, though. And I'm not talking meticulously detailed. I'm talking about thinking where you would like to go with your career, or if you'd like to stay at the same sort of place. And that's one of the weird things about teaching. We progress a lot. We have the teacher pay scales, we have roles and opportunities. You have, the sort of hierarchy within a school. There's lots of opportunities to change your role and what you do. It may not be up, it may be across, it may be out, it may be down. And some people, move up to senior leadership positions and then decide that it's not for them and they want to get back into the classroom and focus more on their teaching. But planning your progression is a good thing. Again, this is to help you to consider what you want to achieve. And I think knowing this earlier is helpful. And I wish that I knew that before I started. For me, whichever job I've worked in before I became a teacher, I worked in, Saturday jobs and this, that, and the other to support myself for university. One of my aims has always been to move up. I enjoy moving up in things. I enjoy being challenged. It's what really progression is all about for me. I love something new. So I knew that when I got into teaching, the part of my progression was going to be trying to move up and taking on new roles. I'm quite lucky I've managed to do that, but that's all I really knew about my progression when I started and what I hoped to do. And I think having that in my mind helped me, but I wish I'd thought about it on a wider way. This also links to your priorities and your passion, okay? And my big tip for you would be, if you want to teach, don't become a head teacher. Think about those elements. If your aim is within 5 years' time to become a head teacher, but you really love the classroom, the head teacher role isn't for you. It's a lot of admin. You don't get to go into class as much as you want to in most schools. So think realistically about what you've already put as your priority and what you've put as your passion. If you've got a subject passion, think about how that might be met. For me, in terms of subjects, my passion is maths. And it's media, so IT. I was computing lead for a year, so that was really good. That was part of my progression. I have worked with lower maths groups when we used to stream for maths, because that for me pushed my maths passion. I enjoy working with children who find maths a little bit more difficult, because for me it was challenging and it was fun to try and find new avenues and ways around things. So that was part of my progression. And also, do you want to move into lecturing or another teaching related career? Because it may be, and I know a few teachers who already think about this, that actually they're thinking, do you know what, one day I might want to go and become a lecturer. I've had that thought. I remember doing my first lecture at the end of my NQT year, and I went to Kingston University. I was like, I can quite get used to this. It's quite nice. I didn't mind a room of 100 people in their 20s and above. It was all right for me. So have a think about what it is that you might want to achieve, and then create your milestones. So the milestones I've put on the sheet, and if you've got the handout in front of you, again, you will have this. The first milestone to think about is before next year. Now, we are in a very tricky time, but we are in a good time in the fact that we have got time to reflect on top of the 1,000,001 other things that we are doing, and live teaching and marking and parent communications and this, that, and the other. Think about what it is that you would like to achieve by the time we get to September, because we've got a few months to get there, and there is some time to do that. Is there CPD that you could be working on to push that progression? That's why it's good to consider it now. Autumn term next year, what do you want to achieve in your first term of the new academic year? Now, for NQTs currently now, this is your NQT plus 1 year. This is when the job gets a little bit more real. You lose 10% of your PPA, you don't have your mentor anymore, and you are really flying solo. What do you want to achieve without that little bit of hand-holding? If you're a trainee teacher, what do you want to achieve in your first term as an NQT? What do you want to do? What do you want to instill in the children? What do you want to see in the books? What do you want to be able to say? What would you like to be able to say, to the parents sat across from you at parents' evening? What would you like to be able to say in the assessment meeting you have with your mentor or your assessor when it comes to next December? Okay, think about that. Then think about the next academic year. So before the next academic year, the first term, and then the whole of the next academic year. Again, this could be your NQT or your NQT plus 1 year. What would you like to achieve by then? Then it's by summer 2022, so that's the next 2 academic years. And then it's your long-term goal. Where would you like to be? If I'd have said to myself 7 years ago that I would be a senior leader, I've been a staff governor for 4.5 years, I have led English for nearly a year now, I've led computing, geography, and science. If I had said that I would have been planning and going on residential trips, which as a child I was the most homesick child in the class, and that one that was always probably really frustrating for my teachers. If I thought I was doing that, I would have laughed at myself. So, really think about those long-term goals. For me, I've considered becoming a deputy head. I wouldn't have thought about that 7 years ago. I'm not quite sure if I'm thinking about it now, considering all things COVID-19. I'm not sure if I want that pressure and responsibility. And also, I need to think about what I want to do in the classroom. And it's the same with you. It might be difficult for you to think about it now, but if you do want to become one of those fast-track heads who is ahead within 5 years and ahead by the time they're 30, that means that actually you're going to spend very, very little time in the classroom. So just consider what you think in terms of those goals. And again, I'm going to keep talking through this one because this is something that you can take away with you and you can think about. And it's one of those that's quite tricky sat here because I could just sit here in silence and look a little bit gormless. But yeah, take away and thinking about it, it is probably the best thing for you. And then the final thing I've put in your pack for this webinar is the teacher's top trump card. Now, I was asked about this on Twitter earlier on. This is something that I have come up with and I created, just to sort of keep the idea in your mind. Because now that you've got your teacher identity and you've thought about those 3 key things, you've thought about your priorities, purpose, and your progression, you need to keep that instilled in your mind and fresh in your mind, ready for you to go and use it into the world of work. So there is on that pack a teacher's top trump card. I knew I wouldn't be able to say that. The big box at the top is for a picture of yourself, and if you're one of these artistic people, go for it. For me, it'd be a wonky stick man, because that's all I can ever manage. Your name, pop it in there, because you have those in all top trump cards. And if you want to give yourself one of the labels from earlier on, go for it as well. You know, I'd like to be Mr. Pierce, the cool teacher. The purpose, that's what we thought about earlier on, okay? And you find this in any of those top trump cards. People have a purpose. You know, what is their particular good thing? I think about the Pokemon cards that the children are always trading. Each one of them has got a role. You know, they're a protector or a guardian or whatever. What is your purpose? Okay. And your special skills as well, because that's really important to remember. Consider how your special skills are going to help you to grow, and they're going to help you to reach further into your career. The purpose, hold that to your core and really think about it. And if by the time we've been thinking about it tonight, something is stuck in your head with your teacher identity, there's been a particular passion or priority that you in your mind have thought, yes, that's definitely why I'm doing this job. Or if you've known it all along, keep it to your core. As I said, my motto and mantra for the last few years has been to make a little bit of difference to everybody's life and to have fun doing it. Now, being a teacher, I can do that. Okay. And for me, it doesn't matter if it's a pastoral change in somebody's life or knowledge, or if it's to make someone smile, if it's to make someone feel more confident, if it's to get somebody over a hurdle, if it's to get someone through a dark time in their life. And of course, children have those times. I don't really mind what it is, but to have that little bit of difference in everybody's life and to have fun doing it. On top of teaching, that is why I do what I do. So on my card, that would be my purpose, to make that difference, a difference maker. And for my special skills, I might put on there my IT, my communication with other people, my willingness to have a go at everything, and subject knowledge wise, something math skills or something like that. But have that teacher top trump card, and use that as well for your children. There's a nice PSHE activity. If they turn themselves into a top trump card, they can do the same thing. They can put their name, what they think their role is, what they think is their proper purpose, and their special skills, or even get rid of the purpose and just do special skills, and they can give themselves a score out of 100. It's quite a fun activity to do. Although there are always some children who give themselves 100 out of 100 for everything, and some children who will give themselves very low scores. And again, that's quite a nice way of identifying those who you need to work with. So that's it for tonight's webinar. It's one of those where I've given you some information, and of course the video will stay up here on YouTube, and it will be on my blog, lifeofanNQT&beyond.wordpress.com. But now it's really in your court. It's time for you to go and have a think about it, to use the handout, print it out, scribble all over it if you want to, use the PDF version, whatever you want to do. But really think about what your identity is as a teacher. Okay, one of my favorite phrases is the whole thing of the heroes don't always wear capes, and teachers are superheroes. And it's fun to think that actually as teachers, we are superheroes, and we have our superhero identity, our teacher identity. If the children saw you as a superhero, what would your special power be? Okay, that's your priority, that's your passion. Those are your skills. Those are the things that the children want to see. So I hope that by doing this evening, you thought about and held close to you what it is that that makes you want to become a teacher and makes you want to do the best in your job. Hopefully that will help you to develop your identity. And if you are going into your NQT +1 year or your NQT year or wherever you are in your career, hopefully that will give you a little bit of a kickstart that's going to help you and empower you. That is all for tonight's webinar. Take it away from tonight. If you want to share anything you've done tonight, that'd be brilliant on the live chat now or on Twitter. I would love to see something. If you've made some notes or whatever and you're happy to share them, please do share them on Twitter at lifeofanNQT with the hashtag Wednesday night webinar. Or find me on Instagram as well at lifeofanQT. There's no "and" in that one. And yeah, if I'm allowed to share them, I would love to share that and to say what we've done today. The website, as I said, my blog is always there. The YouTube channel is here. The replay is available on there. Now, next week, we are going to be looking at behaviour. This is one of the big ones. It is obviously a teaching standard, and it is a reality in the classroom. And the two of them are very, very different. So come prepared next week if you are going to join us for the Wednesday night webinar at 7 o'clock with examples of your own training or practice so that we can explore some scenarios together and consider strategies to make things better. All right, so I'm going to share with you some of the ideas, some of the things that I've tried over the year, some of the research behind it, some of the strategies, and we're going to talk about some scenarios as well. We're moving into slightly more interactive webinars. Now, talking about interactive webinars, the plan for this was only to be 5 weeks. Today is week 3, it's episode 3. Next week was behaviour. The following weeks, so May the 20th, is going to be report writing. However, I've decided that for the last webinar, I'm going to add one on to the end. For the 6th and final one, we are actually going to do a Zoom webinar. And it's going to be very, very interactive and the opportunity for you and I to converse in questions and answers. So if you are interested in taking part in a Zoom webinar for the very final one, which will be the 27th of May, 3 weeks from tonight, then please do let me know on Twitter, or you can email me lifeofannqt@gmail.com, all the usual communication ways, and what you would like to cover. I haven't got a topic for it yet, but I want to do something that is going to help people. And by that point, of course, we could be, if the press is to be believed, facing about 3 or 4 days away from going back into schools. So have a think. Would you be interested in a Zoom webinar, and what would you like me to cover in it? There'll be lots of tweets and social media posts that will help you to get involved with that one. In the meantime, though, as always, you can find me in the usual places: Twitter @lifeofanNQT, email lifeofanNQT@gmail.com. The blog is lifeofanNQT&beyond.wordpress.com, which is where the handout is if you haven't found it for today. And you can find the replays of the last 2 weeks, as well as lots of blog entries that I've done over the last couple of years. Instagram is lifeofNQT. I'm obviously here on YouTube too. A big thanks for your company this evening. Thank you for joining us. Hopefully the internet has held up. I never get to see on this side of things. And I hopefully will see you again next Wednesday when we will do it all over again. A big thank you once again for your company. Take care, stay safe this week, and I will see you in 7 days. Bye.